The Great Depression of the United States didn't just affect America, it affected the whole world. All during the 1920s, Americans bought expensive things, from cars to coffee makers from European businesses. Americans traveled to Europe and spent millions of dollars on hotels and food. American money poured into Europe. When Americans began to lose their money, they stopped buying fancy European goods. They quit traveling to Europe. European factories and businesses suddenly had much less money. Hotels and restaurants started to fire waiters, bellboys, and maids. Like America, Europe became poorer. The Great Depression spread across the countries of Europe. One of the countries hardest hit by the Depression was Germany. Germany was poor and unhappy even before Black Tuesday, the day the stock market crashed in New York. When Germany was forced to sign the Peace of Versailles after World War I, the German government had to agree to pay France and England reparations, huge sums of money to make up for all the money France and England had spent beating Germany in World War I. Germany, which had already lost almost 2 million young men to war and had spent enormous amounts of money fighting, began to try to pay the reparations, but the government simply didn't have the money to pay. So Germany borrowed the money for reparations from American and British banks and then paid it back to the French and British governments. When the stock market crashed, the American banks that had lent the money to Germany demanded that Germany repay the loans. Germany didn't have the money, not unless it could borrow yet again from another country. But all the countries of Europe became poorer during the Depression. No one had money to lend. Now, Germany couldn't afford to pay off its loans or the reparations. People began to lose their jobs in Germany. Every week, more German businesses folded and disappeared. Prices began to rise higher and higher. Soon, a German housewife needed an entire wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a simple loaf of bread. A young Austrian named Adolf Hitler thought he had the answer to Germany's problems. Although Adolf Hitler was born in Austria, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. Although Adolf Hitler was born in Austria, he considered himself German. Many Austrians did think of themselves as German, which is one reason why Germany and Austria fought together in World War I. Hitler studied German art and listened to German music, especially to the operas of composer Richard Wagner. When World War I began, Hitler joined the German army. He believed that Germany was the strongest, worthiest country in the world and that the German culture was the most beautiful. If Germany conquered Europe, Germany's ways would spread across the land, and that could only be good. If Germany wanted to add other countries to the German Empire by force, those countries were lucky to become German. Hitler was surprised to find that many Germans didn't support the war. After a few years of fighting, thousands of German citizens just wanted life to go back to normal. They wanted the war to end, even if Germany had to give up some of its land and its power. Hitler was appalled. How could his fellow Germans be so unpatriotic? Some evil force must be spreading discontent throughout Germany, keeping Germans from recognizing the importance of German victory. Hitler decided that the evil people who were spreading this discontent must be the Jews. Since the Middle Ages, Europeans had been suspicious of Jews. Christians, who knew almost nothing about Jewish culture and the Jewish religion, thought that the Jews had strange, illegal rituals. They accused Jews of being proud and boastful and caring about nothing but money. None of these things were true, but hatred of Jews, called anti-Semitism, was so widespread that in many European countries, Jews couldn't even own land until the 1700s. In the 20th century, thousands of people still hated and feared the Jewish people. When Hitler began to make speeches about how the Jews were responsible for Germany's troubles, he found many Germans who were willing to listen. After World War I, Hitler became part of a political group that became known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Like the communists, the National Socialists believed that the poor and working people of Germany should have more of a say in how the country was run. Like the fascists, the National Socialists believed that they needed a strong leader who would make Germany a great and wealthy nation again. And like many Europeans, the National Socialists were anti-Semitic. Hitler made speeches at the National Socialist meeting. He turned out to be a mesmerizing public speaker. When he talked about the greatness of the German people, his listeners were almost hypnotized. After he spoke, the audience would stand up cheering for Hitler's ideas. Before long, Hitler had become the leader, or the Führer of the National Socialists. When the Great Depression hit America and Europe, Hitler's audience grew even larger. The German people had already been poor and discouraged. Now they were poorer and hungrier and more desperate. They were willing to listen to anyone who would promise them a better future. Hitler traveled through Germany, promising that if Germans would vote the National Socialists, nicknamed the Nazis for short, into office, Germany would change. He would bring order, wealth, and greatness to Germany. He would cancel the terms of the Peace of Versailles so that Germany would be free of its crushing war debt. And he promised that the Nazi Party would get rid of all the menacing Jews who were helping to cause Germany's difficulties. By 1932, over a third of the German voters supported the Nazis. The Nazis had become the most popular political party in Germany. When elections were held, the Führer of Nazi Party, Adolf Hitler, won the job of German Chancellor. He was now the most powerful man in Germany.